Welcome back to Issues of Faith. We are talking with Yara González-Justiniano. She is with Vanderbilt Divinity School, Assistant Professor of Religion, Psychology, and Culture. You've written a new book that we're going to show here in a moment, and we're talking about the Hispanic community, the Latino community, and its fluctuating faith. But you, with this book, you went to Puerto Rico and you studied after Hurricane Maria in 2017, this devastating hurricane, how religion helped in the midst of that struggle. What did you find?
Yeah, so my question in terms of the ways that I was asking questions about hope and how religion and beliefs and faith help get people grounded, but also what are the things that they're holding on to? What are the things that help them hope in ways that are material and tangible? So I was wondering, like, can I touch it? Can I grab some hope? And studying what then are practices of hope? What are the things that enact hope? And I did work with different Christian denominations, mainline, independent, Catholic churches. So I tried to have as much as possible of a sample of different faith traditions and ways that church and Christian churches done in Puerto Rico, because the response, especially the government and local government response, was
it was bad.
It was bad, yeah, to say the very least. And the institutions that were being asked to help and distribute were predominantly the nonprofits and the churches. So the churches became the center of distribution for a lot of communities. And there was no question about giving out the resources, right? There was no question about if you need it or don't need it. There was no asking, you know, what is your political affiliation? What is your denominational affiliation? Who do you believe in? There was not a question of that. There was a question of need and having the resource and sharing that resource. So in terms of thinking about the glimpses of practices, why can't we just apply that in other ways where these divides, although they're important, don't get in the way of responding to people's needs?
So it sounds like you're saying the government did not do a good job responding.
No.
But churches, did they do a good job? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Churches did do a good job.
They did a good job.
And what do you attribute that to?
The sense of community, the sense of, especially around, you know, Christian, and even not just Christian churches, but other religious institutions, because it's this thing about, there was a unity around being pueblo, being people, being together, being one people, in terms of responding to people's needs, right? Like it was
they
not,
rose to the occasion.
They rose to the occasion, and it's not like, I don't want to romanticize it, and also don't want to say like everybody acted in this particular way, but the fact that everything was lacking showed very clearly, you know, it was very tangible, those who were working towards helping others and being that change, because the hurricane was devastating, but what was more devastating is the aftermath, right? Is the responses, is the what it actually unveils. So it unveils structural, systemic oppression and issues, how neocolonialism continues to be part of the daily lives. So all of these things were very evident. So whatever practice or whatever thing people would do to challenge that or to change that or to find joy and hope in the midst of all this was very evident, right? It's not that crimes didn't stop, violence didn't stop, but you could see the difference in terms of what people were doing and practicing.
So what impact did that have on religion, on faith in Puerto Rico? It sounds like they discovered all kinds of things aren't working. Government's not working, all kinds of things aren't working. Here's something they feel like faith did work, the churches did work. So does that mean secularism there is less than we see here? Or like, what impact did it have that worked?
I think that one of the things that it did for the church and the communities was that a lot of communities saw the importance of continued relationality with community. So when I say this is in terms of the difference between works of charity or one-time charity versus actually partnering with the community for it to have sustainable development and change. And seeing how then communities and churches and nonprofits, what they started doing was developing long-term plans. So not just, you know, you need food today and then we have the resources, but how do we create, because this is going to be an ongoing struggle, not just the hurricane, but the things like the aftermath of it is going to be an ongoing struggle. Communities partnered up for it to, for them to have more sustainable, so whenever another hurricane happened, like it does, and it did, we already know what to do, how to act, how to come together, because we practiced this already. So
what's an example? So you went to 5 churches, right? You talked to them. You must have seen some terrible stuff. Yes. I mean, it was real devastation there. What stands out to you? What's an example of something you saw, an example of how that was made better, I guess, by a church or religious community? What did you see there?
Well, one is this collective of different communities that they've started organizing with other communities to have long-term plans, but then they also started training other churches that wanted to do the same thing, and they've continued to do that work. And churches have began, like as I said, like they were the center of distribution. So people now knew that this is what these places are about, right? Like the kind of showing, you know, what your faith, walking the walk, not just talking the talks, right? So that was a thing that I think a lot of local communities saw their congregations doing.
That's great. That's
so
great.
In that sense, and again, this is what I saw within these communities, so it's not necessarily a generalized thought or sentiment, because there are the exceptions, but one very low-key example, after the hurricane, the pastor of this congregation got on the car with his spouse, and he went, because there was no communication, he went to every member of the church's house to see how they were doing. And it was just that, like that kind of pastoral care of, there's no phone, but I still have a little bit of mobility and access. So they went and did pastoral visits to see how, like the day after the hurricane, right? So this sense of community and being well and checking in and checking up on each other, and every place became a space of distribution, right? Like first thing that opened in the post office were people who had P.O. boxes. So people were saying, this is my address, send stuff. And so the people who had P.O. boxes ended up being the center of distribution. Like it was just a way of extending yourself and whatever it is that they would have to others.
Now we have 2 minutes left. The name of your book, it's a textbook primarily, Centering Hope as a Sustainable Decolonial Practice. And it's based on your visits to these 5 churches there in Puerto Rico. What else do you want people to take away from this? A sustainable decolonial practice. In a minute and a half, what does that mean?
It means that what do I hold on to? What is the hope of things even when everything falls apart? What is the hope? What is the hope that I can have? What is the hope that I have that is sustainable regardless of where everything fails? And after the hurricane, absolutely everything failed, but community did not, right? Like that sense of relationality did not, and solidarity did not. So that is what I was looking for. I was looking, what is the thing that I can continue to believe in and practice and move towards that will still be there, even when, right? Even when the systems and the things that I place my hope on, or even when the church, right? Even when all these things might fail me. And what I found is, you know, that how hope has to be at the center, not at the end. So in Christian theology, hope or eschatology is this thing that's beyond and that's far away. So what is the thing that is animating me to move forward, which is why I talk about it being at the center, right, coming out, not just at the end, the thing that we'll find out.
Well, I'm glad we had the conversation. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, that is something that worked, and that's something we want to highlight. So, Jada González-Justiniano, thank you so much for coming on. And thanks all of you for watching Issues of Faith.